gradualist war between the Orthodox and demonic cult had happened. The great war between the demons and the Orthodox. No one could have predicted that the battle would continue for 13 years in an endless hell filled with tears, bloodshed, and whatnot. However, the long war was stopped abruptly with the unexpected truce. Even 20 years later, the details of the truce remain a mystery. Both factions had agreed to remain silent for the time. But as time passed, new forces began to emerge within the Jianghu. On the other hand, some families had weakened because of the war. We see a young woman, ablaze, slicing and dicing through the air, saying, "But why the hell can't I break through the 7-star realm?" We see her, Guo Shi, the second daughter of the righteous sword sect leader, Lady Zhang. "I have to master the red sword art of death as soon as possible to restore my family," she thinks. This sword art has been passed down through generations of her sect. As she sheathes her blade, she says, "Strangely enough, my skills aren't improving." Someone calls her name, and we see her say, "Sister and brother-in-law." This is her elder sister and her husband. "What brought you here all of a sudden during my training?" she asks. Her sister says, "Someone from the Xiangxin clan has arrived." Her sister continues, "Swordman Jiang wants to compete with you in the year's Dragon and Phoenix tournament." She's surprised. What? Among the martial artists of the Central Plain? There are two tournaments that stand out the most. The Heavenly Dragon Tournament, where sex honors and even lives are on the line, and the Dragon and Phoenix Tournament, an event for the young rising talent. This year, both tournaments are being held here in her city, Wuhan. Having to pair up like children is already bad enough, but pairing up with that perverted guy, Jiang? No way. "I can't do this," she says. "Why the hell do I have to get involved with someone like him?" She grunted out to her sister as her sister says, "Don't get worked up and listen to what I have to say first." We see her husband trying to resolve the argument first, saying, "Stop arguing." We see her sister saying, "You always said you would bring honor to the clan's name. If you get selected for the Dragon and Phoenix tournaments, you will gain great prestige," she says with a dubious look. However, if you go against the Xiangxin clan, her speech is cut short as her sister runs from beside her at full speed, saying, "I told you I am absolutely not going. Why don't you just lie about your age and enter, sister?" We see. After she is gone, her older sister sighs. What a pain, as her husband comforts her, saying, "My sister-in-law really does have a temper, just like you," he says, caressing her. That we see at the market. People are roaming everywhere as new goods have arrived. "We are selling Westlake Long Jiang tea today for less than half the price. Did you hear the news? The Grandmaster lost another finger. This time, it looks like someone punished him on our behalf." We see two men conversing as the girl with her sword looks disappointed. She says with her eyes closed, "But what if the Xiangshan clan holds a grudge and retaliates against our clan? Can they do whatever they want just because they are a powerful clan?" As we see, it looked like a scuffle is commencing near a shop. The man says, "This isn't what we agreed on." "What? Are you insane? Do you really want to die so badly?" Another man replies, "Deceiving each other, hurting each other." As we see another group of people, one says, "If his lordship could just lend his strength for this matter." Don't worry about that. Just make sure you handle what we talked about last time. Scheming and dirty tricks are running rampant. We see someone's money pouch has been stolen, as we see all of the people in the market are just fighting with each other. She stands, saying, "Is this the Jianghu I longed for and dreamed of?" As we see, she hears something and takes a look. It's the leader of the Morim Alliance. To think that the dream of unifying the demonic cult would end so fruitlessly. The heavenly demon has fallen. Everyone cheers him on. The 13-year-long war is finally coming to an end. Long live the leader. As we see, it is just a play happening. She thinks to herself, "This is nonsense." Even though this is a play, nothing has been revealed about how the great war between the Orthodox faction and demon cult ended, right? We see someone coming behind her, saying, "I have similar thoughts." In her ear, the boy says, "The Heavenly Demon 9 Calamities demonic technique is also called the Invincible Demonic Art. In a one-on-one fight, no one can defeat him." He continues, "Moreover, the great war between the Orthodox Alliance and the demon cult didn't end in such a trivial manner." We see the girl wondering what is up with this strange-looking guy. We see the boy saying, "I am thirsty. Let's grab a drink together. Show me the way. This is my first time in this city." We see her thinking to herself, what kind of trick is he pulling with his innocent face? She says to him, if you are a martial artist, you shouldn't act like a worthless bum. I have something else to take care of, so I will be leaving. We see him saying, do you really think this Jianghu has such great value? As she turns to him, saying, what do you mean by that? He replies, ideals and chivalry have long been abandoned. This Jianghu is nothing but a facade. Isn't that pathetic? As both of their eyes meet, we see her holding her sword tight, saying, let's not get worked up. As we see her releasing her grip on the sword, both of them stand there. We see her saying, but you are still living in this Jianghu, right? As we see her turn her legs and move forward. This Jianghu is not bad enough to deserve such disrespect, she says. As we see the main character's eyes light up, we see him smiling, turning his face around as we hear, it's a sword ornament made of night light stone. I've never seen this many people in Wuhan before. What kind of tournament is being held this time? Front row seats to the Heavenly Demon Tournament are only 10 niang at the inn of the city. We see people eating, drinking, families, and servants running to serve. I heard the Dragon and Phoenix tournament is going to be extraordinary. The top candidate in this championship this time is surely swordsman of the Book Xian family. You can't underestimate swordsmen of the Namek sect either. As we see the girl entering the inn, everyone is shocked to see her. She says, is it because of the tournament? There are so many people. As we see the server, he says, aren't you young Lady Zhang of the Righteous Sword sect? What brings you here alone? Oh, I just wanted to have a light drink, she says. Oh dear, what should I do right now? The only empty seats are in the special room, he says. For now, please come this way, Lady Zhang. We are the best in the city, so I will give you a bit of a discount. Everyone is looking at her, seeing her beauty as we see her going up the stairs. We see her thinking to herself, who on earth spread such rumors about me? Looking a bit anxious and angry. I don't normally visit inns alone. Please sit wherever you are comfortable, he says. As he opens the door, she sees the strange guy from the Xiang Jian clan earlier. Oh, we meet again, the main character says. If I had known that we would run into each other like this, I would have come with you. We see her saying, my luck is really strange today. As we see the main character picking out a chicken leg, talking about the tournament, he asks, do you know how to register as a participant? What's the deadline? As we see the gradual meals ordered on the table, she wonders, has he been starving all day? You are not serious thinking about participating, are you? He says. Of course. Pretty girls will gather there in droves, right? I have a face that girls tend to like quite a bit. I've been traveling since I was young, and everywhere I've been, girls have always chased after me. We see her drinking and saying, unbelievable. Moreover, has he always been this kind of person? We see him saying, the great war between the Orthodox Alliance and demonic cult didn't end in such a trivial manner. He is acting completely different from how he was earlier. We see him saying, and then I realized who the most beautiful woman of the entire Jianghu is. We see him with a delighted face saying, it's my mother. We also see the dragon tattoo on his hand. We see someone saying, your mother? He says, what, are you disrespecting my mother because she's getting older? We see the girl flustered, saying, that's not it. As she thinks to herself, damn it, why am I flustered? What did I do wrong? He picks up a shrimp with his chopsticks, saying, well, that aside, I am feeling nervous about a big event coming up, so I am craving more food. Huh, is it because of the tournament? No, I am obviously going to win the tournament, he says. I'm aiming to conquer Hubei this year, he says. We see her thinking, he is going to conquer what? We see him saying, there's a lot to worry about, and even more to do. At times like this, I get really hungry, as he picks up the shrimp once again. Winning the tournament and conquering Hubei? Aren't you getting a bit boastful? We see her saying, I thought I heard a voice while passing by, as someone enters the door. Aren't you, young Lady Zhang of the Righteous Sword sect? We see her look into his eyes, surprised and terrified. It's been a while, the man says. This is the successor of the Xiang Xin clan, the one who asked her to pair up for the tournament earlier. Let's have a drink here too. As we see there are people with him, we see the lady beside her saying, here? Well, should we? This is her sister. How have you been all this time? We see the man asking her. His habit of scanning my body is still as strong as ever. I want to hit him right now, but I guess I will hold back. He turns his gaze towards a man saying, By the way, Visser, the main character, is eating such a grand meal. He says, looks like there's someone else here, as he takes out something from his clothes. It's a gold coin, and he throws it towards the main character's food. There are multiple coins. He says it's for the bill. As the main character is still eating, he adds, if you are done eating, could you please leave your seat? He says with an ominous gaze. The main character looks at him with a more ominous gaze. We see as the main character sees the coins spread on his table, where all the food was sitting. He murmurs to himself and then says it out loud, I do not think that this amount of money is enough to pay for my meal. We see the surprised face of the guy who threw the money. He murmurs to himself, thinking, what is this guy talking about? The main character just pointed towards him with his chopsticks, saying, there is more food coming too. It's certainly not going to be enough with just 4 gold coins. We see the guy coming closer to the main character, and with a starry look, he says to the main character, you should go away while I am still being nice, or else. We see him laughing as he says this, murmuring to himself, thinking that the main character is scared. We see him saying, so, you are acting arrogant because you are a member of the Jianghu. As we see 2 of the main characters, one is short with a long blade, a heavy sword, and the second one looks more like a straight sword. Both of them are wrapped up to the brim with clothes. As the man takes a look at them, he says, looking towards the weapon, your weapons look enormous. Going towards them, we see him saying, shall I take a look? We see his chopsticks cut in half as when he tried to lift up the heavy sword, it just stuck to the ground. We see him using all his force with one hand, as his back even twitched, his whole body shaking, but the sword didn't lift up. He thinks to himself, while in surprise, agony, and reality and disaster. What to this blade? Why is it so heavy? He thinks to himself, if I just turn back here. As we see everyone looking at him sternly, he wonders if he will be able to pick up the sword or not. There will be no humiliation worth more than this, as we see him trying to pick up the sword with more strength. Even if I use my internal energy, we see him using his internal energy, putting all of his power into it, and still, the sword did not even lift one bit. We see, after putting every ounce of his energy, the sword lifted up an inch in the air. As he turned towards the main character with a grunty look like he had achieved something, he says, it's quite heavy, so you use this blade to train your muscles. We see his devastated look as his whole body is struck and sucked dry by the sword just to lift it 1 inch from the ground. In the broader picture, his sister is embarrassed. The girl thinks, what's happening? The main character is just enjoying his food. And the 2 servants think, I know, ha ha ha. So it's for practice, trying to give her sister some face and save them a bit of respect. As we see the main character now getting the sword from his hand, he picks it up with one hand and with ease, saying this isn't for training. We see the man's arm shaking as the main character did, and we see him saying, it's obviously a tool for training. We see the main character telling him, no, this is mine. We see the man saying, I am correct though, as the main character, with romance in his eyes, says, are you trying to joke around with me right now? The guy says, as he conjures some internal energy in his hands, we see someone saying abroad, stop. This is the girl from the sword sect, trying to mediate between them to solve this. As we see his sister and the 2 servants surprised by her actions, that she can have that much courage, we see the man surprised by her actions couldn't say anything, just sighs. He says, looking at me with such a hot gaze, are you interested in me? To the sword girl and the main character, who is just standing behind her with a heavy sword in his hand. We see him grabbing the sword girl's hand tightly as he says, well, we'll be joining the Dragon and the Phoenix tournament tomorrow anyway. Looking pervertedly towards her, as if doing it will be a good idea to get to know each other before that. He says this with an ominous and perverted look in his eyes. We see the girl shaking his hand and freeing herself from his grip, saying, I am sorry, but I have decided to participate with someone else. We see the man angry, saying, what? Why? As we see him clenching his fist in anger, he says, because using your family's power to impose things onto me is a pretty shameful act. We see the girl saying that out loud and boldly, without a seam of hesitation in her eyes. We see the man absolutely surprised and angry by her statement. So who are you participating with? He asks her. The girl hesitated about whose name she should say, but we see the main character saying, me. I'm going to participate with her, to the guy. Everyone is in broad spectrum as the guy sees the main character in his eyes. The main character just says, "She will be with me," holding his sword. The guy just said, "What?" As we see the temperature in the room getting a bit hot, we see his sister coming forward, saying, "Do you know who you were talking to?" Looking ominously, trying to impose her authority over the main character. The main character just says, "I do. Do you know who I am?" The main character retorts with a sense of monarchy in his tone. We see her saying, "Of course not." A person has two types of reactions when faced with the unknown. The main character says, looking at her, either they dismiss it or they fear it. But you are doing both. You are dismissing me because you don't know me while hoping that I will be afraid of your brother. Quite contradictory, don't you think? As we see her listening to his words carefully, we see a slight smile on her face as she pokes her chin, saying, "I am not sure." We see the man saying, "You certainly have some guts." As the main character says, "You see, I eat everything." They say people who eat well also speak well. We see the man getting angry by the main character's words as he grabs the table. The main character just warns him with his eyes, "Be careful not to spill the food." We see the man looking into the main character's eyes and abruptly stop whatever he was doing, fix his coat, and then says, "I will see you then," as he moves towards the door saying, "I will see you at the Dragon and the Phoenix tournament." Busy as every one of them left, in the broader picture, the servants are trying to calm him down, while his sister took a last look, and the main character also responded to her. She says, "I will see you again then." Because every one of them has left the premises, the girl thinks to herself, "I am in big trouble," while looking at the broken piece of table. She thinks to herself, considering his temper, he will be trying to go after the main character's life as well. The main character just says to her, "Well, now that we are at this point, let's just participate in the tournament together. I will revise my plans." He says, "Revise? But weren't you planning on participating from the beginning?" We see him saying, "Yeah, that's why I have to revise this." We see her saying, "Don't tell me you said you wanted to participate. Did you mean you were talking about the Heavenly Dragons tournament?" As we know, it is a tournament for the Masters, the Grandmasters, the Elder Sages. The main character says, "Of course I was going to participate in that." She says, "Why would you stay still with such amazing martial arts skills? Why didn't you give them a good beating?" We see him saying, "I don't fight little kids." The girl just got kissed, hearing this, saying excuses. We see his broader tone, with sternness in his eyes, saying, "At least those kids aren't the reason behind this, Jiang Hu Rot." We see the girl saying, "If you say that with such a serious expression, it sounds like you are telling the truth." As we see outside, it seems like Lady Jiang likes young Master Jiang a lot. She was obviously trying to make you jealous. It looks like she doesn't plan on winning at all. To think she's rejecting young Master and entering that tournament with that laughable guy. You see the man hearing their brabble and thinking to himself, "Lovable guy? What a joke." That play earlier was certainly not one to be held lightly. It's my first time seeing him. Who exactly is he? And that arrogant Venge. How dare she reject me? I will make those who repent for what happened today pay to the bone. He says, as we see them walking away at the Righteous Source sect. We see her big sister saying, she rejected Jiang's offer in one go, outright. As all of them are sitting at the table, young Master Jiang is wreaking havoc at the brothel because he is upset. I was worried because the rumors about him weren't good anyway. This is the matriarch of the sect, but we don't know what he will do with that temper of his. As the matriarch says that. The girl is still young. We can't make her sacrifice herself for the family. It's not just about the family. He might hurt her too. My wife and children are suffering because of my shortcomings, the man thinks. He is the leader of the sect. Had I mastered the Crimson Death Sword art, our sword family would have been powerful too. Anyway, if it's true, this is a serious problem. We have to find her first. There is no need for that. It is true. We see the sword girl saying that, and the main character is behind him. You see everyone surprised by seeing her. We were worried, but who is that? They say after seeing the main character. The girl introduces herself as the one she is going to participate in the Dragon and the Phoenix tournament with. Everyone is shocked to the core, hearing this knowledge. As the main character moves forward, taking a stance with glory in his eyes, he says to them, "Nice to meet you. I am Jorg Legion." We see a majestic-looking flash shown on the screen as someone asks, "Is that porcelain from the Fujian region?" It looks like it's the main character who asks. How much did you pay for it? The sect leader replies, 150. What a pity, he says. If I were there, you would have only needed to pay 120, the main character says with a smiling twinkle in his eyes. We see the sect leader saying, right, as he gulps his saliva, saying to his daughter, you say you're going to enter the dragon and the phoenix tournament with the young master? As we see her sister thinking to herself, no matter how childish she is, how could she enter the dragon and phoenix tournament with such a strange guy? As we see the main character trying to rotate the porcelain on one of his fingers. Which sect do you belong to, young master? The sword girl's sister says. The main character has put the flask down, saying, I do not have one, but my parents sell fruit near the Yemen gate. He says that with a nonchalant expression. We see everyone shocked. Fruits? What? As their faces are surprised to hear what the main character just said. We see someone asking, what are those blades and swords you are carrying on your back? As the patriarch says, have you mastered both the arts of the sword and the blade? He thinks to himself that something a third-rate thug would do, even if it's just for aesthetics. You see the main character saying, yes, I have mastered both. Hearing this, the sect leader was in disaster, devastated by his fate. The main character says, I am quite exceptional in several areas. I come from a really strong bloodline. As we see both of their auras resonating, we see the man saying to him, don't tell me you learned martial arts from your parents who sell fruit? The main character said, yes, but do you not eat fruit? You ask. We see the man now turned into a rock, thinking about his daughter's safety. We see her sister going near her ear, saying, apologize to the young Master Jiang first thing in the morning. Well, as the night comes to light, we see her walking towards somewhere, thinking to herself, I brought him home for now in case the guy tried to do something to him, but what should I do? She thinks to herself as she sighs her breath. We see her distracted by something, looking towards the main character, who is standing right there. As she goes near the main character, she asks him, are you unable to sleep? The main character just replied, I can't sleep whenever I change locations. He says, moreover, there's something I must do tonight. He says something. She wonders. The main character, putting his hand forward, says in a tone of death, I'm going to send off a few guys today. He says so nonchalantly. We see her saying, why is he saying such a brutal joke so seriously? Why the fruit shop? Something he was joking about too. She thinks to herself, what kind of people are your parents? She asks, I heard that your mother is beautiful. What is your father like? The main character thinks to himself and says, my father tries to take care of everything while abiding by the rules. That's good, but he also imposes those rules on me, which is the problem. My parents are opposed to me entering the Jianghu, especially my father. The girl thinks to herself, indeed, his parents are not part of the Jianghu, so they must be worried about their son. But the main character just shocks her, saying, they say that they are worried about me destroying the entire place. I understand that too. Anyway, my parents are also worried about me. However, now that we are at this point, she thinks to herself as she remembers the table broken. We see the main character seeing that she is in agony, despair, and thoughtfulness, saying, by the way, I think I digested all my dinner already because it was only vegetables. We see her shocked expression as he says, will they serve meat dishes tomorrow? We see her saying, what? As the main character laughs. We see her saying, stop saying such foolish things. Leave this place after breakfast tomorrow, she says. The main character just looked at her, and she replied, what's wrong? The main character said, with a slight smile, are you worried about me? We see her saying, nonsense, as she is flustered. Hearing this, the main character looked at her while she was going away, saying, I am worried about the people you are going to meet in your future. As we see the image of the main character in the reflection of a pond, we see that ominous aura coming from a tower looms in the air. At the entrance, there are several people near the bonfire. One of them says, that young guy was trembling with a sword in his hand, trying to seek revenge for his father. How could I pretend not to notice it? I had no choice but to send him to his father's side, he says, with an ominous grin in his eyes. As we see everyone laughing, they do not look like good guys. On the contrary, we see the second guy saying, I suppose you just saved a poor kid from being an orphan. We see the main character arriving there, and all of them asking, who's that moron? Who are you, and why are you standing like this? Do you even know where you are? One of the guys asked, as the main character stood right in front of them. The main character says, "The Dark Heart, a place known as the Wandering Market. You know that and still came? The world has become kind. I see even little kids roaming around here." The Kaiser says to the others of his accomplices, "If little kid comes out of your mouth once again, you are going to die." The main character said, with an ominous look in his eyes, who was just looking for a reason to tear them to pieces. We see the leader of them with a sigh in his eyes as one of the guys gets up, saying, "I was going to go easy on you because you were a little kid," as he sheathes his sword. "But you have no manners." We see him lunging at the main character with the tip of his sword towards the main character's face. The main character ducked and easily avoided the sword from hitting him. We see a purple aura in the main character's hand, most probably a poison technique, as he touches the man's gut very softly. We see the man frozen in the air as his accomplices are watching him, saying, "That idiot! Are you going around and getting beaten up by kids now?" Everyone is laughing, saying, "Just give up everything and go help with your mother's business." They think that the man is still alive as the blade from his hands falls into the main characters. We see the carcass of the man on the ground. Everyone is now on their toes, seriously looking at the main character, shocked to the core. The main character says, "This time it's extremely important to me. This is the first day I take my steps forward towards the future, so I have no choice but to steel my resolve." He says we see them saying, "What?" as all of them are now on their guard, getting ready to attack the main character, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about?" We see the main character just lunge towards them with the sword of the man he just killed, and with a steely look in his eyes, he says, "That means even those whom I usually let go." As he slices through every one of them in one fell swoop, everyone spat out gallons worth of blood. The main character says, "I have to kill today," as we see blood on the floor and the main character with no expression. We see the room filled with countless bodies and the room decorated with bloodstains all over. As the main character opened the door to the main hall, it's a lavish room with many girls, a butler, and a fat man on the throne. As the main character looks at them, he sees the girls first, then the butler, and lastly, we see him going towards the fat man as he smells the ominous aura in the air. He says, "What a great atmosphere it is to be in." We see the fat man just trying to drink some soju as he bangs his fist against his throne, saying, "Are you here as a guest?" looking ominously towards the main character. "What are you here to buy that you are making such a fuss about?" We see this being say, "This is the gluttonous emperor, dark herbs leader." The main character says with no expression at all, "The most expensive person in this room." The man just sits in a stupor, and we see him laughing throughout the room. "How dare a chick who's wet behind the ears want to buy me," he says. "Look, would a young guy like you even have that much money?" The main character says, "How much is it?" The man just abruptly says very large numbers, saying 500,000. The main character nonchalantly just throws 500,000 on the ground, saying, "Here, is the deal sealed?" Then he says, while smiling, we see the man singing to himself, "I thought he was all talk, but he was that much of a rich guy." As we see him looking at the main character's back, thinking that it looks like there is more money in the bag, he says to the main character, "What if I increase the price?" The main character says, "I will be disappointed." The guy, with an idiotic smile, says to the main character, "What if I kill you and take that money?" The main character just says, "I will be even more disappointed," with a gelatinous tone in his voice. We see the man pointing at something and saying, then, as we see the girls behind him now coming towards the main character step by step, saying, "I will disappoint you a bit." As we see all of them so close that they have surrounded the main character, trying to put him in their seductive magic. We observe the absolutely malicious atmosphere of the room. Eyes everywhere selecting lips and an aura that is profound yet simplified. We see all of the girls who are covering and embracing the main character as the fat man sitting on the chair observes the main character surrounded by these seductive demonesses. We observe the fat man saying, "The moment you stepped into this room, you were caught," as we get to know that these women carry the pinnacle of sorcery that paralyzes a man's reason. Illusion, blissful dance. Technically, that just means subduction, distraction, and one-hit blow. We see, as the main character was going to get stabbed by the hairpin, he, with no effort, blocked it. As he turned to the girl, kindly saying, That was a good dance, although it wasn't good enough to kill me, he says. We see him taking the hairpin and launching it with force. The hairpin became an arrow shot by a divine god, which, when pierced, struck the throne of the fat man. He was in a blind stupor. We observed that the arrow impaled into the wall, broke the entire wall and the lamp attached to it. Every girl there observed this sight and was surprised, mesmerized, or let's say, fearful. We see them in a stupor, seeing what the sorcery has undone. The fat man soon realized that the main character had figured out the way of their soul manipulation technique in just an instant. We see the main character saying to him, "Are any of you guys here because you like that fat guy?" We see the hesitation on their faces, as saying anything would bring up a lot of trouble for them. We see the main character saying, "Were you dragged here by force? Leave. Don't worry about the aftermath." As the girl standing closest to him, still with hesitation, asked, "You want us to leave? But you must be scared of leaving." Right in front of him, the main character cuts her line in the middle, implying that they must be scared of the fat guy. We see him saying, "But still, you must muster up the courage to leave now so that you can live well after this. Don't you think?" We see the girl's eyes light up at this sentence. And as everyone was in a moment, we see the fat guy laughing out of his wits, with saliva going everywhere. We see him saying to the main character, "That was an impressive speech. Very well, I will let you go, only after cutting off your limbs," he says to every girl standing in front. As we see the horror on their faces as he says that, the main character did not say any words. He suddenly shifted his leg and said, "Really? I will slice you up alive." Then he says, showing his true personality as a battle-hardened warrior. We see that this killing intent was so massive that the man had to gulp his words down. We see him imagining as his foot is getting drenched by blood, and he is standing in a pool of blood. This is the murderous intent of the main character. We see the main character getting thanked by everyone as the maiden said, "As you said, we'll muster the courage. Furthermore, we won't forget your kindness for giving us such a big amount of money." As we see the main character handing them all his money, saying, "You'll need it to start a new life. Sister, have a good life." As the pleasantries were done, we see the trembling body of the fat guy as his servants speak over. We see his thoughts. "I'm going to think that his great gluttonous emperor would freeze up because of a seasonally man's murderous intent. I can only watch as those things run away. What has he reduced me to?" We see his body getting larger and larger, saying, "I feel so awful," as the ornaments on his hand break by the size increase of his body. We see the floor cracking as he stepped on it. As we observed, a large figure said, "I shall kill you with my special martial arts." Relatedness, Emperor's body protection art. We see the main character now excited, saying, "You have to endure quite the beating to get even bigger." We see, as the man threw a massive punch, the sheer power of it broke through the ground as stones flew out. The main character dodged it by jumping away. As the main character got behind him, he sensed it, and with fury in his palm, he tried to attack the main character. But for the main character, it was just like playing as he ducked down backward. We observe his smile towards the man, who, seeing him, called him a rat. We see the man trying to catch the main character, but he ran away quickly, saying, "I will turn you into powder." We see the main character right in front of his eyes. As the man was going to attack him, the main character just said with a nonchalant expression, "I hate lunatics like you." We see the main character, with a single kick to the man's head, throw the man away as blood splattered everywhere. The main character kicked the man through the doors, breaking everything in the way as he landed, impaling himself into the wall. As we see his bloodied outlook, now gorging with pain, he tries to stand once again. We see his image in front of the main character. We see that he gathered enough strength to land his foot on the ground as he now conjured every inch of strength left in him, saying, "Die, you son of a..." We see the main character now seeing a disgusting person, What were you doing by keeping those women hostage? As we see the main character pick up a small stone, now trying to pinch it, he conjures some energy in his hand. With just this much strength, we see that little stone impale through the man's arm, cutting it right off as blood splurged everywhere. We see the man couldn't even notice the pain because of the speed. As we take a good look, the man's hand is completely gone as he falls on his knees, trying to cope with the pain. The man, now bloodied, says, "That crazy lunatic." As we see the main character facing the person head-on, he realizes he is a real master. The fat guy finally understands that he is facing a person who is out of his wits. We see the look of the main character, now glowing with energy. We see the man start laughing, smiling, singing. In that case, do you think I'll just end like this? As we see the man now getting bigger than before, he has become a giant monster, saying, "I'll make sure to kill you before I die." As we observe purple lightning coming through the air, the main character came very close to him, conjuring a small ball of energy through his palm. As we see the energy impaling the main character strikes the man in the stomach. We see the energy was enough to impel the man throughout even the whole building and the forest. With this heat, the man spat out gallons of blood, and he was finally dead, his body lying down in rubble. The main character, towering over him, says, "I have paid for your life, so I will be taking you." We see the man still has a little energy to say, "Where are you trying to take my dying self?" We see the main character saying, "I think you have mistaken something. I'm not talking about you. It's that guy that I want," as he pointed toward the servant of the fat man. We see the fat man seeing, "What can that good-for-nothing even do? Moreover, if it's someone like you, you should be able to take them away without a sound. Then why did you do it?" You see the main character saying, "Because I needed a reason to kill you. You are worse than I am, probably, but good people never fall into my traps. There is no way someone or something like you exists in this Jianghu." As we see the whole picture of them, we now observe the main character's back, at which the servant is looking. The main character says, "We finally meet, Master Wa." We see the man suddenly twitch at hearing that name. The main character said, "Or should I call you Mukil so that you answer me?" Turning his head, we see the man's eyes go back into the past, saying, "That's right. What a nostalgic name. This is the former patriarch of Mount Phantom Manor. Who would have thought that a formation arts and engineering technique genius would be in a place like this? It took me quite a long time to find you. Thanks to that. As expected, is it that difficult to recover from that incident?" We see the man seeing something as we learn about Mount Phantom Manor. Anyone from Jianghu knows that place is famous for having the best machine techniques. This man, who possessed excellent talent and a great family, was a man everyone had envied, at least until his only daughter touched an unfinished mechanical device. As we see the scene of carnage and horror, the man covers his own eyes, crying as we see the body parts of his daughter on the ground, spread through because of the malfunction of a machine. Having lost his only family in that accident, he blamed his foolishness, and because of that, his skeleton structure was changed. We see that the fat man got him as a slave, changed his appearance, and went into hiding. We see him saying, "You are a good adult." Seeing this, we see the man hearing these kind words from the main character. After so many years, he lightened up a bit. A good adult who has suffered for 10 years. No one should suffer all his life, unable to forget the sorrow of losing his family. We see him thinking to himself, "What a strange guy. He tried to save me, whom he met for the first time, while risking his life. Up until now, has anyone else told me those words? How are you going to use me after buying me?" He asked that we see the main character executing his aura, saying, "To dominate the Jianghu." Hearing this, he was in a stupor as we see him laughing. "Ha ha ha." We see him fall toward the ground, saying, "My new fate," while Muchel greets his master as a pleasing alliance to the main character, saying, "I will devote the rest of my life to you, master." We see the main character smiling at him as he says, "Shall we get started then?" Going toward the man, he conjured up some flames in his hand, looking evil toward the man as the man wonders what is going to happen to him. After some time, we observe the outside of the tower with some legs on a tree branch. We see a man just outside the tower looking toward it in the night light of the sun. We see his face covered with a robe, thinking to himself, is the young master still fighting? Implying the main character. We observe as the night emerges and the feet of that man land on the ground. How in the world? I heard that a body once transformed by the supreme arts could never be diverted. So how? We see the servant saying this as we see that his hunchback was returned to his normal shape, and he was finally looking like a human. We see him sincerely thanking the main character, bowing his head at a 90 degrees angle toward the main character. The main character says, I'm going to use you till your bones wear out, so I am the one who's thankful. As we see in the frame someone saying, you did it, we see this is the scarred-faced guy. He says, young master, as he removes his cloak. We get to know that this is the guard of the main character. He is Julian's. We see the main character taking his name with a smile on his face as he says, please shave that beard. You look old. We see these words of the main character impale him in the head as blood splattered out of his mouth. The main character says to the man, Master Hua, this is my god, as he introduces both of them to each other. We see them exchanging their pleasantries as the main character said he will be guiding him about what he needs to do from now on and that the plans have been changed. The main character says to the man, implying that they will begin with the Zhangxin clan. First, we see the look on the man's face, surprised about something, as he says, you said that the likes of that clan are not even worth messing with and participating in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. All of a sudden, why did you change the plans? He asked the main character. We see the main character with closed eyes telling him, we never know when someone's mind will change, do we? We see the man with a stern look say, that's what a playboy would say, implying that the main character was like a playboy. We see the main character looking at him, mocking him by saying, I see that you are jealous of my popularity. Of course not. Just because you have a lot of women chasing after you doesn't mean you have good fortune in love. That's merely indulgence. And true good fortune in love lies in marrying a good woman. We see him saying to the main character. The main character just mocked him again, saying, you are truly extremely jealous, I see. We see the man, the master, was just confused out of his wits about what was going on between these two. We observe the main residence of the Jiangxin clan, as two guards are guarding it. We see that the sword girl and the sect master have both arrived at the place. We observe the guards saying that the union leader and the young master are away. The sect leader asked, can we know when they will be returning? They get the reply that they don't know that either. In the memories of the sect master, we see that his oldest daughter was saying that the young master is wreaking havoc because he was upset. He thinks to himself, we must apologize before things get out of hand. They observe the gates opening as someone says, please tell them once they are back we were here. As the gate opened fully, someone says, well, isn't it Grandmaster Zhang? I was on my way because of the union leader's invitation, but I didn't expect to meet someone who I would be delighted to observe. This is the 8 flying hands, Shiryuki. We see the sect leader saying, long time no see, Grandmaster. I heard that the clan's leader was showing off his power by inviting skilled individuals, but it looks like he is selective about who he is inviting. We see the man saying, it seems like we both have some free time. How about we grab a drink? It will be on me, shall we? As we observe someone looking at them through a wooden window in the spring breeze, we see them filling up a small glass with wine, saying, please take this. It's bare bile wine. It's hard to obtain. I got the pleasure of tasting this precious wine thanks to Grandmaster. As we observe them at a table eating, he says, by the way, it seems like the Xiangshan clan leader was very upset. Please put in a good word for us if the opportunity arises. Ha! Don't worry too much. I will put in a good word for you, he says as we see the speechless figure of the sword girl just sitting there observing everything. We see as they were eating, he says, kids can fight. It's normal for them. We see the girl thinking about how the main character wasn't at home when she arrived with food. She asked our servant. The servant replied, yes, young miss, it seems he left last night without a word. We see her picking up food with chopsticks, eating it while whining about what he was saying about wanting to have meat and whatnot. Why did he leave all of a sudden? He must have left Wuhan by now, right? As we see her gulping down wine, we see both the sect leader and the sword girl bowing toward the man. We had a good time and even got to enjoy some good wine. Thank you. I will treat you next time. We see the man saying. With a jolt, he says, "Oh dear, I seem to have forgotten something urgent I have to attend to." As we see the man ditching both of them without paying the bill and getting out of the inn saying, "I am leaving first. See you next time." We observe the madam of the inn handing the sect master the bill. We see him reading the bill. His hands trembled, his eyes shocked into wildness, as it was 120 nyong for a bottle of wine. This was truly fearful for him. Moreover, the prices of these side dishes were beyond common sense. The man just sighs a breath and says, "I don't have much money right now. Can I come back tomorrow?" We see the woman say that they do not accept any kind of credit, but they can't overlook his circumstances. As we see people gathering up, "Until you bring the money, your daughter can stay here." As we see everyone surrounding her, what was happening? She wonders. We see the man saying, "Are you holding my daughter hostage?" with an angry face. The madam says, "You can consider it collateral. If you don't have the money, your daughter can entertain guests too." We see the slight grin of lewdness on her face. The man says, "Is she out of her mind? This must not be a normal wine house." Moreover, all of them have an unusual aura surrounding them. Either their strength is equivalent to mine or even surpassing me. We see him clenching his fist and trying to sheath his sword. As we see he was about to unsheath his blade, we hear a familiar voice saying, "We meet again, sect leader." As we see it's the main character with an astounding aura coming toward them. We see them surprised, seeing the main character. "Young master, what brings you here?" the sword girl asked. "I am here to drink, of course." We see the main character replied as he slammed the wine bottle on the counter, saying to the madam of the inn, "The wine tastes a bit strange. Did you mix something in it?" The main character says that without any smile on his face, which can imply that he is really serious about it. We see her saying, "What do you mean? I heard that big shots came here. Do you sell fake wine to those people too?" As we see, everyone there was hearing what the main character was talking about. The woman tried to mediate this by saying, "It seems like you were drunk. Please lower your voice." We see the main character grinning, saying, "The bare bale wine they sell here is fake. Fake wine alert." We see him shouting it as everyone inside and outside the inn can hear that. We see every person there gathering saying, "What? Fake? Why is it noisy?" We see that all of these people are quite the big shots. The madam tried to de-escalate it by saying that it's just a drunk customer causing a ruckus. Please don't mind him, as we see sweat trickling down her face. We see the main character saying, "A ruckus. I will show the proof to everyone here," as we see him pointing towards some men. "I can prove that this wine is fake. I will take everything this place has earned today." We see the woman saying, "And if you fail?" Then the main character says, "Then you can brew liquor with my gallbladder," implying that she can have his life if that happens. "Everyone, please come outside," as we see the main character taking them into a courtyard of some sorts, where there was a sealed door. We see everyone talking about, "Did this place always have a backyard? By the way, what proof does he have anyway? People have been talking about wine from this place, but don't you find it strange? Why would they store their wine in such a distinct, hidden place?" As we see the main character hitting a lock, saying, "They even changed the door down with the iron lock. There is no way we have stored our wine in such a place, don't you think?" We see the woman saying, "We store our trade secrets in our warehouse," as we see sweat trickling down her face. The main character just broke the entire door as he took out a jar filled with something. Oh dear, the young man just broke the door with his bare hands. What a show of his power. We see the people of the inn all getting worried. "Hey, that's..." As we see the main character putting it onto the ground. The smell of alcohol was there. We see him saying, "This is the true identity of your so-called precious wine," as we see him taking it. We see the sweat down the madam's face, saying, "I must stop him if the guest sees that." We see her commanding, "Now that things have come to this, I have no choice but to kill him first and take away the wine," while aiming for a gap within the chaos. We see the main character smile and throw the entire pot of wine upside down, as we see the pot of wine breaking into several pieces. The observers notice some kind of insects flying throughout the whole area from the wine. As every guest there took a look near it, they were horrified. "What is that?" We see everyone now in a commotion, saying, "Why are there bugs in the wine?" We see the main character holding the wine, asking, "So, do any of you want to try it?" The main character is serious about it. We observe the main character handling the little cup of wine, saying, "Do any of you want to try it?" As people had already seen what was in the wine, we observed disgusting faces made by them, saying, "I am good," as many people even viewed their side of the wine. "How can I prove it if no one tries it?" The main character cried out loud that we see the main character all in when one of the guys in the back says, "Stop it, you lunatic! I have never heard of this making beer bottle wine with such insects." The main character took the insect really close to his face, saying, "This insect is called the black painted insect. It's called that because its back resembles a piece of art." We see the man asking the main character, "So what about it?" The black painted insect tastes almost like the beer bile, especially its excretions. It's so similar that no one with an ordinary sense of taste would notice. We see everyone even more distressed about hearing that its excretions are what they have been drinking, that we see someone with a grand stature say, "How do you know that?" Even Madam was in shock at seeing that person. This is Elder Yang. He is the alliance leader of Southern Peak. We get to know that after a 13-year-long Great Orthodox demonic war, having suffered significant losses, the 9 great sects and the 4 great families sealed their doors, and the demonic cult began living in seclusion, taking advantage of that void. 4 major forces established themselves as the strongest players in the Jianghu, and as we see everyone bowing down at the sight of that old man. Among them, the Northern Heaven Supreme Family and the Southern Peak Alliance are the biggest forces. So, this ordinary-looking old man is one of the most powerful people in the current Jianghu. We get to know that the main character is also surprised after seeing the expressions of everyone around him. The old man says, "I heard that the black-painted insect only lives in the south. How do you know about them?" As we see his experienced face, the main character responds with, "I have wandered around a lot ever since I was young. Your knowledge is quite vast." "Who are you?" The main character replied, "I am Jayak Legion, the eldest son of drifting clouds and flowed water." We see the man wandering, drifting clouds and flowing water. We see the main character responding with a smile, "The best fruit merchants on the outskirts." We see the surprised face of the old man and his servants behind him. The old man just laughed out of his wits as saliva flew through the air. We see him thinking, is he intentionally hiding his identity? How impressive indeed. As we see the main character teasing the sword girl with the insect, we see his servant behind him looking towards the old man, thinking about something. He thinks to himself, to think that the alliance leader would be interested in such a kid, how odd. We get to know that this is the White Tiger Squad leader of Southern Peak, that we see the big man saying, "I would give it a try if you want." The old man agrees to it, and as the big man took a few sips of the wine, we see him realizing something, as he looked towards the woman with a disgusting face, saying, "Why, you blasted little wench. This is the same as what we drank earlier." Now that he has said that, every guester says, "What? Then did we really just drink? Please calm down. I am being framed." The madam tried to lie her way out. We see everyone saying to her, "Bring us the real thing then, if that is the case, or give us your head. You damn guys. What are you doing? Why aren't you stopping them?" As we see her guards thinking to themselves, the leader of the Southern Alliance and the White Tiger Squad are here. "We can't do anything," we see her saying. "Do you know who is behind me? You will all die if you mess with me." As we see the main character smiling, we see the sect leader saying to the main character, "Young master, if it weren't for you, we would have been in great trouble. Thank you very much." Bowing his head, that we see the main character saying, "Of course." Hearing this, the man was surprised as the main character continued, "If not for me, who would do such an awesome thing? You are right. From now on, I will be looking forward to being treated as your savior." We see the main character saying that with nonchalance on his face. "Then shall we leave now? I think I will have to inconvenience you for the time being. There are no empty rooms in the Wuhan because of the tournament." As we see the old man looking towards the main character, the big guy says, "What an interesting person." The old man replied to the big guy, "No, he is more than that." We see the big guy wondering, "What? Pardon me?" As the energy surges in the old man, he says, "From the moment I saw him, the feeling which I had forgotten so long ago has rushed back in." What's that? A combination of pleasure and excitement, desperateness, and ambition are stirring up inside me, like the day the Southern Peak Alliance fell into my hand. I have no idea why I'm feeling this way. The alliance leader that I know has enough insight to look through just about anyone, but he says he does not know. Does that mean this guy is that special? As we see in the dark night, as the wind blows through the forest, someone's running, posture blood-covered over his clothes, as he is running for his life. I must alert them at all costs, he says, as we see the face of the man covered in blood, while thinking to himself, the fate of the Jianghu depends on this. We observe someone rushing towards him, as a shadow pops upright beside him. The man was a bit startled, as he was unsheathing his blade sheath. He is already caught up. We get to know that this is the man from the Orthodox Alliance, as he shows his badge towards the wounded man. The wounded man took a look at it, and with one glance could say that there is no mistaking it. That's the Orthodox Alliance identification tag. We see the man introducing himself, as he belongs to the Northern Heaven Supreme family. We don't have time, so I will get to the point. We must cancel the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and the Heavenly Dragon tournament. A group called the Flying Swallows Association is proving a big conspiracy in this tournament. It's this year's tournament being hosted by the Northern Heaven Supreme family. Why are you trying to reach the Orthodox Alliance instead of reporting to your superiors? We get to know that there is a spy among us. I can't trust anyone. We see as people fly behind them. The man suddenly realizes, damn it, they are chasing after us. I will become the bait, so you should get out of here and alert them about this, as this information leaks anywhere. We see the man asking the guy. The reply is, you are the first to know. We see the darkened face of the man saying, what a relief, as his smug look shows his true colors. As the man was going to say, what did you just, we see that the Orthodox Alliance member just cut his head in half, as blood splattered and his head rolled off in the forest, saying, you are mistaken. The people behind us are not the Flying Swallow Association. It's the Flying Swallowtail Association. As we see butterflies, we observe that it's a lady's foot that is on such a little branch. The man kneels down and greets, saying that the 16th butterfly greets the alliance leader. We do observe her saying, what happened to the other guys? The man says that the 14th butterfly has already taken care of them. We see the lady with the fans saying, right, I knew he would do it. As we observe a beautiful face, but with a murderous grin in her eyes, seeing this, the Dragon and Phoenix tournament will become a nightmare. We do observe that in this dark night, the main character and the sword girl are walking towards somewhere, as the main character says, I am looking forward to it. We get to know that he is talking about how tasty the meat is that the second leader is going to buy. We see the sect leader asking him if he likes meat, right? He is going to buy good meat, so he can pay his respect to the main character. The main character feels hungry just thinking about it. The girl says, you are always hungry. It's because I am thinking a lot these days, he replies. We see the girl saying, to conquer the world. The main character replies, that too. Then what else? As we see the main character has already sensed something. His darkened face appeared, and his smile vanished. We see her thinking, is he lonely because he is alone in a foreign land? As they were walking, they stopped, and she says her thanks for today with a broad, smiling face, saying that the young master of the family is talking about the one that tried to lift the main character's sword, and that the man had deliberately ordered the madam of the house to do it. To think I considered entering the Phoenix and Dragon tournament with that kind of a lunatic, we see the main character saying. That's why I am telling you, to enter with me, I will bring you victory. We see the girl's face suddenly rotate towards the main character as he wonders what is happening. She says, very well, as the main character also smiles. Winning may be hard, but I want to at least put that man in his place, she says as we observe the night and the moon shining. Both of them say, let's do our best. You don't have to, but if that's what you want to do, the main character replies. The main character looks towards someone. Seeing that before this happens, he says, I suppose we must take care of that lunatic first. As both of them rotate their heads in the other direction, we see a man, the one who ran away after eating and drinking, leaving them to pay the bill. Are you the one who upset young Master Jiang? The guy I planted at the inn just told me that some strange lunatic ruined everything. He's talking about the main character. We see the main character saying, is it your hobby to run backwards and check on the targets you were trying to kill? We see the girl surprised when the main character said kill. Is it that bad that he, Jiang Engine, only ordered me to kill you? But that wrench will be a problem too, he says with a broad grin on his face. We see that his murderous aura could be felt by the girl as she says, I can feel his murderous intent. He's trying to kill us. This is truly happening. Will we be able to beat him if we join forces? But I have never slashed someone in real life before. We see her hands trembling, even holding the sword. She asks the main character, do you have any experience in real combat? The main character just got a bit behind her as she was surprised. The main character pleads for her, stay please, save me, getting behind her as she sweats bullets right now. We get to know that this guy is a master of palm techniques. When he unleashes his skills, his hand seems to multiply into 8, which earned him the name of 8 Flying Hands. He was once a hero who dreamed of a better Jiang, but only the villains always seemed to thrive. He realized that the distinction between good and evil was meaningless, and then he himself became a villain. We see him standing ominously in front of both the main character and the sword girl. The sword girl's body trembles. To think that I have to face such a guy alone? The difference in skill and experience is like heaven and earth. As we see the main character noticing her trembling figure, he says to her, leaning near her ear, for now, draw your sword. She unleashes her sword, saying, yes, I can't just stand here and let this happen. We see her figure pointing the sword towards him as we observe the man, the main character, and the sword girl in a bigger frame. As the man says, you seem eager to die first, we see he has activated his palm attacks. We observe him lunging towards the girl with his 8 palm technique, trying to end it in one go. Both the main character and the girl dodge that attack. The girl could not fathom how fast he was. I need to use my movement technique, she thinks, but we see her body wasn't able to keep its balance as she hits the root of a tree. As we observe her falling down, her back hits the tree bark, and the man uses his attack towards the girl. We observe her ducking down onto the ground towards her knees as the man destroys the entire tree with his palm attack. The scared look of the girl shows she thinks to herself, this is completely different from when I practiced. We see the man's ominous face looking towards her, and lingering in her eyes, she thinks to herself, she's really going to die. We see the main character telling her, don't rely on your movement technique. Let your body flow. The sword will also flow. As we see her hearing these words, the main character continues, your feet don't move the sword. The sword moves first, and then your feet follow. All right, let's focus slowly on the sword. She thinks to herself, little boy, you are quite the talker for someone who hides behind the back. The man says, as we see her attacking towards him while he was distracted, but he just blocks her attack without breaking a sweat. We see the agonizing eyes of the girl thinking to herself, if I get pushed back here, both of us will die, as she starts to attack him relentlessly one after another, throwing large strikes. As the man blocks her attacks, he says to her, do you think these childish tricks will work on me? With one of his palms, he tries to grab her face, but she ducks down and retreats a bit behind. What should I do? She thinks to herself, as she got a bit hurt and her shoulder was bleeding. By the way, something seems off, the main character says. She wonders why he says, your sword technique is normally quite heavy, so why are you moving so daintily? The Crimson Death Sword art features a variety of changes in footwork and irregular swordplay. It's based on agile movements. Is he saying that the method I trained in for over 10 years is wrong? Moreover, what does this guy know about the Crimson Death Sword art? He's the one begging for his life right now. You look like a turtle that should be in the waters, stuck on land, the main character says as she tries to think again on her own statement, saying, I have been feeling like I've been wearing clothes that don't fit me for a long time now. Ever since I reached the 7-star run, it feels like I am being blocked away by a wall. Could it really be what this guy is saying? Is the Crimson Death Sword really as fast as an arrow, yet slow like a turtle and as fluid as water? At this rate, death is the only option. As we see her feet moving as if she is on water, she thinks to herself, even so, let's give it a try. As we see her legs move with trickles of water, she gets into her stance, moving like fluid water. We observe her unleashing her sword, thinking to herself, heavy and soft, as she strikes. We see some hair cut in half. We get to know that these are the hairs of the palm guy. He's in a daze, seeing his hair. That's it, she thinks to herself. We see the man gritting his teeth, now getting more and more agitated as he attacks, saying, arrogant brat. We see him conjuring his magical power in his palm and attacking her. She tries to block it with her sword but gets blown away far, dropping her sword and getting hurt internally, splattering out blood. We see him saying that he will put an end to this as we see his demonic eyes glowing while looking towards the sky. We see that the girl has vanished. He thinks to himself, "What the hell? Where did she go?" We see him hearing something from behind him, saying, "That is it." We see the main character in the air, holding her like a true master. We observe the man looking towards the main character as the main character shines like a bright star in the moonlight. We get to know that the main character is using a skill called Void. We see the main character saying, "It's the falling blossom step of the heavenly thunder steps. You probably don't know much about it. My father's martial arts, since they were rarely ever revealed." We see him saying, "Your father's martial arts?" as the man trembles on the ground. The main character puts the girl near a tree, saying to him, "My father and mother say they fell in love at first sight." Honestly, I never believed in those kinds of things, although I think I understand a bit now. We see the trembling man saying, "Do you manage to use the reverse flow of wondrous movement? How could a kid master such a martial art?" We see our attack coming towards him, and with one strike, the main character busts his skull out. We see the broken fragments of his teeth, skull, and nose as the man goes through a tree, breaking it and then slamming himself on the ground. "No way," he says as we see him coughing out blood. "That guy's on a level that I can't even comprehend," he thinks as he sees the main character. We see the broken tree as the man begs for his life. "Please let me live." We see the main character saying to the guy, "Do you know why I hate my father? If it were him, he would have definitely told me to forgive you. He's a really frustrating person." We see the man saying, "Is he insane? What kind of nonsense is this? Let's run away fast." As he tries to run away from the main character says, "But my mother always said we will never live like that. We will never live like what your father tells you." As we see the main character's real personality coming out, he unsheathes his blade. "Even if my father's path is the right way." As we see the cloth on the blade gearing up bit by bit, the main character says to him, "I will always live on my mother's path." "What is that sound?" the man wonders as the main character unleashes his blade for the first time. It's like a ghost, screaming, scratching, wailing. As we take a look towards the main character's blade, with flames overtaking all his hands, we see the demon skull on the blade's guard. As the blade ignites, we see its bright red, agonizing look. We learn that this is the Northern Hellblade. As we observe the main character, with blood-red eyes wielding his weapon, he swings it, and we witness a demon emerging from that strike. Multiple souls attack from that single slash, and we see the terrified face of the man as all these demons lunge toward him. It was like a blood show, a bloodbath. Oh, pure carnage and evil. The main character just stares at the man, who is already injured. When the man sees the attack, he can't even fathom what is happening. As we zoom in, we notice the tiny cuts on his face, and we realize that the man has been cut into hundreds of pieces in an instant. He was already dead before he even knew what killed him. We see the main character's bloodshot eyes, staring at the man's lifeless body, as he says, "My father's path is just too boring to follow." We see the main character singing the song that goes like, "On a windswept cliff, I stand and sing of paths to take and what they will bring. No one hears my song out here, but a flower on the rocks lend an ear." As we see the sword girl, who was just knocked out, open her eyes, the main character realizes it and asks her, "Are you awake?" She is a bit surprised about how the main character has given her a piggyback ride. She asks him to put her down, but the main character implies on keeping going because she's hurt. She does not recall anything. The main character tells her about how the man had no luck at all. Who would have thought he'd get a fatal blow from the sword that you built with your eyes closed? I went and finished him off after he fell. We see her surprised face saying, "You stabbed him to death? Did he die?" Of course, the main character, with a grin on his face trying to scare her, says, "Is he immortal? How could he still be alive with his heart stabbed into the ground?" We see the terror on the face of the sword girl, realizing that that man is dead and she is the one responsible for it, at least half responsible. As we see her trembling arms over the shoulders of the main character, he quietly says to her, "There's no need to make a fuss. He deserved to die. Besides, Don't they say that drawing a sword without the resolve to use it is an insult to the sword? Looks like the main character is quite a fan of Shanks from One Piece. We see she is still quite hesitant. In her image, the main character is still a very mysterious person. He may seem like a senseless man, but he also seems like a different person occasionally. As we see the main character, as they are moving, say, "It's the beginning now." He replies with a smiling face as the girl looks over his shoulder towards his face. The Dragon and the Phoenix Tournament, the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament, and Conquering the World. We see as both of them walk towards the new path up ahead. Well, on another side of this continent, two old people and a middle-aged man are all deep in conversation. As we see the harpoon-like crop cutter tools, they are covered with ominous aura, and the normal-looking solid is emitting at most the opposite aura of the harpoons, but still of the same or more intensity. As we see the killer gaze of both of them looking towards someone, they say, "Did you buy it?" It looks like these two are no normal people, just judging from their weapons. We see the third one, the middle-aged guy standing, saying, "Yes, here are they," as we see him pull out some dumplings, 6 to be exact, in a wooden box, handing it to them. We see the old woman eating one of the dumplings, gazing at it as she says, "We will soon arrive at Wuhan." Sometimes traveling slowly like this is also a pleasant experience. It brings back memories of the old days. We see her telling something to the middle-aged man about how he knew what his friend said when he met her 20 years ago. She's talking about the old man, who was freaking out, saying, "Are you going to bring that up again?" As soon as he saw the woman, he drew out his sword and lowered his voice dramatically, saying, "Supreme Demon Empress, I don't care about your past misdeeds, but the day you stepped on the young master's shadow, you will die right here." As we see the memories of them fighting with each other looking cool, we see the face of the woman, ominously adding some traumatic effects. Well, it's her memory, so what can we say? We see the man clenching his own hair, saying, "That was a long time ago. I was senseless back then, wasn't I?" We see the middle-aged man spit out what he was drinking as all of them have a hearty laughter. The middle-aged man asks, "What did he mean by the young master?" In the story, we see her smiling, saying to him, About that, I am talking about Legion's father, the main character's father, if you didn't understand from this." We see the old man saying, "Ha ha ha, I can't believe Legion is already participating in the Dragon Phoenix tournament. When did he grow so big? A lot of young kids are going to get hurt this time." The man says without any hesitation and still with a laughing face. We see the middle-aged man saying that the main character does not mess with kids unless they do something that deserves a beating. As we see the face of the guy who sent the man after the main character to kill him, it looks like this guy is going to get a beating. We see him saying, "That lunatic is still alive," implying to the main character. His servant says, "Indeed, sir, we confirm he came out of that righteous sect with young Lady Jiang, the sword girl." We see the man freaking out, saying, "What is that lunatic I hired doing? He can't take care of one mere guy." He is talking about the person the main character cut into pieces. His servant implies the man as a great warrior, saying that he didn't return since leaving last night. We see the scared expressions on the guy's face as he processes the news in his mind that the man has not returned yet. Where did he disappear? Don't tell me. He wonders if the man is dead, which he is indeed dead by the main character. But we see him starting to shake as he laughs out, thinking to himself that he must be insane to even entertain such a ridiculous thought about how the main character can kill such a Grandmaster. He thinks about how the main character managed to save his life, but we will find out whether it was due to luck or skill in the Dragon Phoenix tournament. As we see, it's the day after the night, obviously. But as the crackers go into the air, bursting with a beautiful resonance of sound and colors, it looks like it is the day of the tournament. The banners of both the tournament and the family hosting the tournament are on the road, with guards on every corner of the street. We see the massive hole in which this tournament is going to start as we get to know the dragon and the phoenix are all arriving. The dragons here imply the male martial artists and the phoenix for the female ones. We see people talking about how there is the young master of the Southern Sword sect and the young miss of the Huang family, whatnot. As we see a girl screaming so loudly that the eardrums of the passers-by begin to burst. She notices someone in a mesmerizing robe. This is the young master of the Northern Heaven Supreme family. I am Hagi. He is also the successor of the family. We see people saying about how he is better looking than the rumor suggested. As we see with him is the young lady of the renowned Sima clan. Have the four renowned great clans finally started to make their moves? People wonder, as we see their attention grasped by one more person. That man is the young master of this Southern Peak Alliance. He's the one who will win the Dragon Phoenix tournament, people proclaim. And with him is the young miss, the greatest beauty, the daughter of the Clean Water Mountain Manor. As we see the people saying how she is very beautiful and they will all root for them, we see the hand of the main character in the air as he thanks people for rooting for them, even though no one is talking about them. He still is in his own days, talking about how he will be sure to win and others don't have to worry. People are just astounded because they don't know who he is. We see someone saying, "Who are you? Stop covering for the young miss and piss off." Is he not even nervous? Who would have thought I would ever envy his indifference? We see the sword girl saying. The main character says, "They have decorated this place nicely. These Northern Heaven Supreme family brats must be making a lot of money, right?" We see her chuckling at the main character's comments as we see she takes the name of the main character, and the main character looks towards her with a side eye. As we see her beautifully embraced face saying, "Let's try our best together." The main character smiles and, with his smiling adorable face, says, "Sure." Can anyone even imagine that this was the guy who cut a man into 1,000 pieces just one chapter before? Anyway, continuing, we see that the 8 teams who are participating should comply with the referee as they have been called. We see the man saying, "Don't touch anything and just wait," as they were going inside. The main character thinks about something and says, "He's talking as if he wants us to touch something, isn't he?" We see that the girl cannot understand the main character's words. Inside the room, many people have gathered as they see how nerve-wracking it is. "How many people do you think will advance to the second gate?" The sword girl says, "What are we doing here?" The male character just looks around. We see her saying once again, "Are they going to ask us to do from the first gate?" The main character, in a daze, is looking towards somewhere as we see the match starts upon entry sign getting towards the wall. The girl thinks, "What is he looking at?" The main character reads the sign and thinks, "What do they mean that the tournament will commence the moment they enter?" The main character realizes it in its entirety as he smiles and folds his hands. We see him guiding the girl towards the painting as he says, "Don't you feel something strange about this drawing?" "Something strange?" she wonders, as we see the drawing where it seems like a lot of people are fighting with each other with numerous weapons. We see her taking a look at it, thinking to herself something, and saying that she has finally got it. There are 18 figures in this drawing, and they are holding the 18 traditional weapons of the Chinese martial arts. That means, as she was going to say something, the main character cuts her off saying, "That does not mean anything. It's a trap to draw your attention to the 18 traditional weapons of Chinese martial arts." We see her embarrassing face saying, "A trap? Then are you saying that there are other hidden secrets?" "Take a closer look once again," he says. We see her looking towards it but finding nothing particularly other than that. As we see her pupils enlarging, she notices something. How the people in the painting may seem to be fighting, but they are all looking at one thing. They are all looking towards the incense burner in the hand of the very last guy. Everyone's gaze is towards the incense burner as it radiates in the middle of the fight. We do observe that in the hall filled with people, there is an incense burner placed on a table, even though they have told us not to touch anything and that we will be disqualified if we do. We see the girl saying, "The examiners are watching. Be careful not to touch anything, even by mistake." As the main character's hand comes close towards the incense burner, with a loud noise, he grabs the incense burner. We see the people around him are surprised by the main character's action as the main character lifts it up, taking a look at it. People nearby, especially a man with a red sword, look towards him as if he is a fool. The main character looks towards it from a lower angle with the sword's gun, as people are confused, looking towards them. The main character found out something about how Dragon and Phoenix Hall is written exactly under the incense burner. As the main character points toward it, we see the sword girl looking at it, asking the main character, "Dragon and Phoenix Hall? What does it mean?" She cannot fathom the meaning. The main character says to her, "It said match started upon entry, right? The first stage has begun." As we see the trembling man behind them saying something to the main character, the main character and the girl both get ready to go, arriving at the palace, maybe the first priority. We see someone shouting, cutting the main character's line in half. Same weight. We see the man holding a red blade and the little girl behind him as he points towards the main character and the sword girl, saying, "You too. Did you not hear about not touching anything?" We see him saying this like he owns the bloody pavilion. "We can't tolerate your careless behavior here." We see him shouting towards the main character, and for the main character, who is not so fond of such people, he looks towards him. You see the guy rambling about how, "Don't you think such kind of act could harm everyone?" We see he's trying to teach the main character and the girl how to act, as we see him saying with anger, "Put that down at once." The main character, who has merely experienced such kinds of things multiple times throughout his life, says, "Something's gravely wrong with you." Calming himself and taking a breath, he says, "Why does a young man like you only live by the rules?" You see the sword girl behind the main character thinking about how he looks the same age as us. The main character tries to teach him how kids should reject and rebel against the existing order. We see the man is not taking this advice and rambling about how what the main character is saying is just an excuse for immature kids, still shouting and spitting all over. We see his side eye looking towards someone at a glance. We see all the instructors paying attention to their scoffing, with no emotions appearing on their faces. We see the guy smiling, thinking to himself, just in time, "It would be a good idea to subdue this idiot here and leave a strong impression." We see the man saying about how they only told them not to touch any items, but there is no rule that says he can't take out his sword. We see the man trying to threaten the main character as he says to him that no words will affect him. We see the companion with him is a bit smart, trying to gradually stop the commotion. The man who is trying to show off has made up his mind, accessing the main character. "Don't worry, I will just give him a scolding." As he unleashes his blade, we see suddenly a force arrive as a hand forces his sword back into the cover. It looks like the main character has had enough of the guy as he comes closer, not even giving him a chance to draw his blade out. As the main character stands still, we see the man's eyes completely devoured with fear, saying, "That lunatic." As we see the main character's true personality trying to emerge once again, his smiling, ominous face, which we have seen that brings death and blood, is emerging once again. The man is wondering how the slight movement of the main character's palm is so strong. We see the main character coming even closer to the man's face, saying to him, "Let's not humiliate yourself and listen to your little sister." The man is now sweating relentlessly as he tries to speak. We get to know that he cannot move an inch because of the murderous intent put on him by the main character. As we observe this happening, everyone's attention is now allocated towards them as we see his sister coming towards his wrist. We see her saying to her big brother about how he did while holding back. "You mustn't point your sword recklessly at the powerless." The man wonders, who is the powerless here? We see her bowing her head and saying, "Excuse our rudeness," towards the main character. The main character seems to be happy as he takes a breath, smiling. He puts down the incense burner on the table as we see him calling the sword girl to go with him. We see that even though the little girl didn't realize it, the sword girl did indeed realize what happened, or at least a glimpse of that distressed a bit. As we observe, the guard says to the main character, "You will be eliminated if you leave without permission." The main character, without any hesitation, says, "Sure," seeing that other onlookers were surprised about how and why the main character is leaving on his own accord. We see the main character turning around, saying, "You may be pathetic, but I will give you a chance because of your little sister. If you want to advance to the second gate, follow me," the main character said, as we look at the expressions on the face of both the brother and sister. The man grits his teeth, saying to the main character, "Didn't you hear that you will be eliminated as soon as you leave?" We see the main character getting out of the hall, just chuckling about it as he leaves the building. We see other people gathered there looking towards them, dazed, seeing that lunatic. As we see all that happens, the main character and the girl have finally arrived at the Dragon and Phoenix Hall. We see the girl, who had some doubts, now say, "The Dragon and Phoenix Hall really do exist." The main character pulls the door, seeing that was a real difficult problem. How many participants would be here? We see the girl thinking that there would be only 2 of them as the problem was almost impossible to solve. She thinks that they will win, but as soon as the door opened, her expectation was crushed as we see hundreds of pairs inside the hall. Seeing so many people gathered, we see that she cannot fathom the situation. The main character just takes a look around as we see the girl asking about how these many people solved that riddle. The main character, who is taking a look around everywhere, sees people from high nobility. We see other nobles and even the successor young master of the Southern Peak. We see him saying to the sword girl about how would the precious and prestigious Orthodox faction be called as one for nothing. We see the girl thinking about how the words of the main character sounded like sarcasm as she realized something. Her pupils dilate even by thinking about it. She asks the main character if he is telling her that there is corruption involved. The main character is pointing towards the people, saying they must have only given the information to the prestigious clan. I can tell just by the faces that idiot is here before us. The main character is pointing towards the person, the young master, who tried to kill both of them, calling him an idiot. We see the girl thinking to herself, that lunatic, as we see he is with her sister as well, both standing there. We see the sword's girl in a rage about how he is walking around so confidently even after all of what he did to both of us. The man thinks to himself, judging by how the wench is looking at me with eyes wide open, does she know something? It looks like she met that idiot I assigned. I wonder what could have gone down between them. I definitely told him to get rid of that lunatic. What the hell is that guy doing? He's talking about the main character. The main character seemed like the man couldn't fathom, but he let his real emotions show on his face as he looks toward him with murderous intent. We see the man realize something, thinking to himself, something is wrong. Is something backing him up? But that doesn't seem to be the case. Did the man I hired take the money and run away? As we see him looking at her sister, she is in a love daze, looking towards the main character. The main character, his head around, looks like he doesn't call himself popular without any proof. We see the man getting angry towards his sister, thinking about what this woman is doing with her eyes wide open, looking towards him. As we see the drum commence, everyone's attention, including the main character and other people in the room, turns towards someone. We see a particular person arriving, and everyone is wondering who this man in the robe is. Who is that guy? We see him announcing that all the dragons and the phoenixes gathered here, congratulating them on clearing through the first gate. We get to know that this is Bong So-chan. He is an elder in the Northern Heaven Supreme family and also in charge of this tournament. As we see everyone's expressions looking towards him, all of them are ignited with fire about how all of them have passed. We see even the sword's girl is excited about how the main character was right and they passed. We see someone stop all this excitement, saying, "Please wait. Hey you, return now." We see the guard stopping those brother and sister who earlier had a scuffle with the main character. The man says that he has something to discuss. We see the girl looking towards him, saying, "That guy," as the main character also takes a glance. We see the guy with anger on his face saying, "This is unacceptable," as we see the crying image of his sister because there are people in here who should have failed, he says, looking towards all of them, including the main character and the sword's girl. It looks like something very exciting is going to commence finally. As we see the commotion arise, everyone is wondering about what the man is talking about. Not valid. Even the attention of the examiner is piqued. We see the disdainful look the examiner presented towards the man saying, "Unacceptable, you say?" The man with an angry face says to him, "When we entered, the hosts clearly said to us not to touch anything, quote unquote. We merely followed those instructions." As we see him pointing towards the main character, saying, "In fact, these people are the ones who broke the rules and should be disqualified." We see a few people gather behind him also starting to say, "He is right. There is unfairness towards the test. The exam is unacceptable." The word unacceptable is not one that anyone had heard in the Dragon and Phoenix Pavilion before. As everyone gathered there listened to what the guy was saying, the examiner, who was quiet till now, blasted out with, "Stop your whining." We see the look on the people's faces when those angry words reach their ears. The man, with a disdainful look towards them, says, "Do you think the affairs of the Jianghu are a joke? You never know what might happen to you in Jianghu. You have to keep your eyes open and be on your guard at all times. You were careless. You were told clearly that the match would begin the moment you went in. If you were to die at the hands of an assassin, you wouldn't find. Are you going to argue it's not fair? To whom are you going to complain? The ruler of hell, Yama?" The examiner lashed out at them, saying, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself in front of those who came all the way here after solving that mystery?" We see the faces of all the guys standing there in a daze. we see the main character, whose attention was just diverted as the sword girl asks, "How did you know that the incense burner was the glue? Was it just merely a coincidence?" The main character softly answered her misconception, saying, "There is no such thing as a coincidence in the Jianghu." We see the girl really using the main character's words, thinking to herself that Jianghu is way more scary than she initially thought. We see the poster of both the brother and sister as the little girl cried, saying, "We just did what we were told." As we see the disparity and cruelty, it's more than what the sword girl initially thought. If she were with someone other than the main character, she might have to face that too. As we see both the brother and sister now consoling each other, saying that there is no other way. "Let's go home." We see the smiling face of the examiner as he announces with a grin on his face, "You will thank the heavens for being eliminated today, because this dragon and phoenix tournament is going to turn into hell." As we see the evening arrive, the main character, holding some meat skewers, says to someone, "Here, have a bite." As we see someone's mouth eating the main character's food, we see it's the sister of the sword girl, as she is delighted by the main character's food, saying, "It is so tasty." "I know, right? Awesome, isn't it?" The main character replied with a bright smile on his face. As we see both of them talking, the main character told her about how it may be the same meat, but when he grills it, it is way tastier, isn't it? This is the third daughter of the leader, also the youngest sister of the sword girl. We see the main character talking about how his mother is perfect in every aspect. Her only flaw is that she cannot cook. To avoid falling into cheap taste, he had to learn to cook himself. I believe the joy of eating is truly the best among life's 3 greatest pleasures. By the way, those 3 pleasures are food, alcohol, and women, he says. We see the lady of the sect understand what the main character means after eating his food and admit that it's better than hers, even though she is a good chef. We see the sword girl turn to her sister about how she's enjoying it. Isn't she? And she should chew it more properly. Her sister replies that it just melts in her mouth before even chewing. The sword girl has never seen her sister so lively before. We get to know that she used to be always healthy, but suddenly at the age of 7, she fell ill. Even the most reputed physicians couldn't find the cause, let alone the cure. She thinks to herself, "Will my sister ever be cured?" It just seems to get worse and worse with every passing breath. We see the sect leader saying about how she usually hardly eats a spoonful, but thanks to the main character, today is great. He is really talented, and he was the one who helped his daughter pass the first round. The main character says out loud, "You are well aware you can rely on me for the second round as well." We see the red on the man's face, thinking to himself, "In the past, I would have thought he was bragging again, but he isn't someone ordinary. Only a fool wouldn't see that. Who on earth are you?" We see everyone thinking about it as the evening briefly turns into the night sky. We see the main character's feet embedded on a flowery terrain, looking lost and focused at the same time. As his feet land on something, it looks like a flower or 2 were crushed. The main character sensed something as his attention flowed towards the sensation. We observe the whole terrain getting disturbed, more like shaking violently, as we see rocks flying everywhere, emerging from beneath the Earth's surface. As the main character is standing, we see the ground before him start to crumble into pieces, one by one. As the crumbling takes quite a while, we see the main character looking towards something curiously with his eyes. As we see what had happened to the flower field, it has been turned into more like a deadly terrain where grandmasters would train themselves. You see the expression on the main character's face suddenly turn into a smile, saying, "This looks really great." As we see the villa master and the main character's friend/servant behind him, we see the main character standing on the ground covered with a dome. The villa master says, "I've been disarmed of the formation arts." It looks like everything was created by this absolute genius of a person. As the formation crumbled into reality, we see him saying, "The formation just now was the 9 palaces extinguishing flower formation. It's the lightest of the 3 formations installed in the manor. The second formation is the 5th element and the 7-star formation. And the last formation is the Celestial King of Light formation. Especially the Celestial King formation. Once activated, no martial master can escape it unless they know how to dismantle the formation." We see the main character saying to him, "It must be a formidable formation indeed, but Villa Master, you got one thing wrong. There definitely exists martial arts that allow you to break a formation without knowing how to dismantle it. We see the expression of the villain master as the main character says, "Someday, you will find out." As we see the night darken, the main character's subordinate says, "Beside the tree formation, a mechanism called the 7-step path of the Grim Reaper will be installed as well, and major buildings are being set up behind that construction, which will be done soon." Then the main character replied to him, "What's this? We are only one step closer to forming the strongest and most impressive sect of Jianghu." The main character says to his subordinate. We see him looking towards the main character with confidence in his eyes, as the main character also glances at him. He says, "We discovered the whereabouts of the wind god as you predicted. I will have to pay him a visit tomorrow." The main character replied, "But why all of a sudden?" We see the man saying, "Is there anyone you want to offer it to?" We see the man's grim face trying to sarcastically attack the main character. They see the main character saying to him, "That's a bad habit. Asking someone even though you already know, trying to test the waters." He apologized to the main character, saying, "I can't stop you, geez." We see both of them peacefully standing. The main character says about how the night view always excites him. He doesn't know why that is. "Is there a story I don't know about? Something like me falling into a well when I was 2 and being trapped in the darkness for a day or 2. The man says, "Nothing like that ever happened. And even if it was true indeed, you would have crawled out of there yourself." What kind of childhood does the male character have? Well, it looks like the main character hates himself sometimes because of this. You see the main character calling out the man's name, and the man asking him, "Yes, young master?" The main character, looking towards the entire Jianghu, says, "Can I have the light all to myself?" With a look on his face, it doesn't seem like he is kidding. The man says to the main character, "In this entire Jianghu, who other than the main character could do a better job at this?" When in the bustling streets of the markets, we see the main character and the girl both walking towards someone as she asks the main character where he is taking her. Without saying a word, the main character just looked towards her and, with a calm face, told her about how he was going to get her a real weapon. A real weapon? She wondered. We see in the past that the main character has observed how the girl is very bad at collecting weapons. Her only determination for weapons comes with their looks and price. The main character even offers his pocket money to her. Well, he had enough of her nonsense and says that he's going to take her to a nice place. We see her confusing looks after he said these words. Anyways, we see that they have arrived at their destination as lanterns are lit and multiple spears are on a wall, showcasing different kinds of weapon handling. We see a stern-looking blacksmith-type guy wearing a robe. The sword girl feels like she's not in the right place, as the atmosphere is kind of scary. As we take a look around, we see that there are thousands of weapons lying around. She thinks to herself how the main character introduced himself as a person who has never come to Wuhan. But how in the world does he know about the Dark Arms Merchant? The Dark Arms Merchant is a place that secretly deals with dangerous and valuable weapons. As the main character stops looking around, we see him saying, "Is this all that you've got here?" You can see the look on the guy's face as he analyzes the main character. When he takes a look towards the main character's blades, which, in his eyes, are emitting a different kind of aura, he forces a smile while offering the main character something off the shelf. Something different. Since he's a special guest, he will show him this appropriate item that we see the box opening, with a chilly frost essence emerging from it. You see the man introducing this weapon as the Frozen Jade Dagger. Seems kind of powerful, isn't it? Continuing with the story, we see the dagger emanating energy and aura, and it feels like the environment is getting colder. We see the main character take a look at it, mumbling something to himself, while the girl also sees what is in the box, saying that it is so pretty. We see that it costs a staggering 15,000. The girl's eyes widen. It looks like she has seen a monster or something. Even when facing death, she wasn't this scared. We see the main character trying to make a deal out of it, saying, "What can you give us as a bonus if we buy this?" The girl is absolutely surprised about what the main character is talking about. A bonus? The man wonders. After thinking for a moment, he asks the main character if there is something that he wishes for. Well, the main character asks him if they can't just choose from one of these items here, doing it so nonchalantly. The old man isn't a dummy. He realizes that the main character is aware that there are no ordinary items here. But he still thinks about how the main character is quite a strange person. It looks like the man has agreed, and the main character has a smile on his face. It looks like he has chosen something as he points his index finger towards what he has selected. We see the old guy's eyes bulging out as he looks towards somewhere. The sword girl wasn't expecting this, that don't miss out on this surprising moment, as we see her expression as well. The man, after seeing the main character selection, laughs at it and sternly asks the main character what his name is. The main character introduces himself as JOK Legion, even though it's the first time the man has ever heard that name in his life. Just a small kid of young age can recognize that an item like this is out of his understanding. Does that mean that he has an extraordinary background or is an extraordinary individual? Don't tell me those blades are truly... We see that the man has finally realized what kind of monstrous weapon the main character is carrying. We see the man's grin as he thinks to himself, looks like the master of that item has arrived. He then asks the main character if he will ever see him again. The main character, with a darkened look, says to him, "Since you have been generous enough to give me a bonus." We see both of them grinning at each other, laughing as they're talking man to man. As always, the sword girl cannot understand the moment. We see the main character washing something. The girl is angry about how the main character spent 15,000 on a dagger. Not just that, but he even asked for a gold glove as a bonus. She has her head in her hands as she pulls her own hair, thinking about how the main character is either crazy or foolish. She decides on crazy fool. What humor the author has. Anyway, we see her asking, "Moreover, how did you get that much money? Didn't you do something bad?" As we see her poking the main character, asking him, "Are you a son of a rich family?" The main character got fed up and asked for her hand. The girl tried to refuse, saying that she does not need a glove or anything. The main character told her that if she wore this, it would help improve her martial arts a bit. "You are stuck at this 7-star right now. Isn't that correct?" She did not understand how the main character knows this. The main character says to her, "Is there anything that I do not know about?" The girl still asks him, "Will this really help, or are you just making fun of me?" The main character assures her, taking her hands in his own, and says, "Even the most trivial objects are bound to possess their own unique energy. Treat it with respect and sense its presence." We see the girl's face, kind of mesmerized by the knowledge she has gotten from the main character as he puts the gloves on her hands. The girl suddenly notices that the gloves have become transparent and are now emitting some kind of energy powerful enough to generate wind as it intensifies. We see her asking the main character, "What is this strange energy?" All of this is happening as we see so much energy coming towards the gloves and getting absorbed by them. The girl is also covered with it. We see the glove emitting a yellow, shiny glow as the energy intensifies. The girl cannot fathom the situation. The main character just sternly looked towards her with cold eyes. In a broader frame, we see how this merely dirty glow has changed the entire surroundings into a wind disaster. We see the expressions of the girl as her pupils dilate. She finally realizes after all this that the gloves are no ordinary item. The main character is very pleasantly happy about how the gloves have accepted her as well, and he wasn't wrong. She has talent for certain. The girl wonders about acceptance. "It accepted me?" She questions why there is wind written on her hand. The main character finally breaks the silence, explaining how it's the wind god and she should greet him. It looks like the main character has the second glove. He tells her that if they each have one, the gloves will react when they are close. The main character outrightly tells her how her internal energy is still lacking, so it doesn't work, but he can tell. The girl cannot fathom the situation. The main character assures her that the materials it was made with are no ordinary materials. It looks like the original master of this weapon was the first king, famously called the Wind God, the greatest martial master of Jianghu 300 years ago. In one word, it's the treasure amongst treasures. The girl cannot fathom why a treasure like this was kept in nothing but a dark arms merchant's store. The main character tells her that he is not sure, but the guy must have been waiting for someone who can recognize it. The main character talks about how she can block the sword chi with her bare hands. Of course, her internal energy is very weak, so she will get greatly injured if she uses her hands. But still, at least her hands won't be cut off, he says with a nonchalant look. We see the girl a bit distant from him as both of them look towards each other. She asks the main character, with the purest intention, why he is treating her so well. The main character is just silent after hearing those words. He smiles while looking towards her, looking like an 80-year-old in a 20-year-old's body. As we observe rain falling on the pavilion, it looks like a stage has been readied for the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. We see the main character seated on a chair with the sword girl next to him as she asks, "What are those footprints on that long stone slab?" As we see there are many footprints on the stone slabs, the examiner announces, "The second stage of this year's Dragon and Phoenix tournament is a test of striding art." Oh boy, I know where this is going. Well, the test is quite simple. You can just go from this point to the other point, but there are two conditions. You must step on the footprints marked here, and the two people must assist and cooperate with each other. We see people thinking about how striding art is quite simple and that there will be no problem in passing. We see the young master of the Southern Peak proclaiming that anyone who has learned martial arts can do this. He says it out loud towards the examiner, boasting that it's child's play. The examiner thinks to himself that there is no one as pathetic as this lunatic, the successor of the Southern Peak Alliance. Starting from the second gate, there are no special privileges. Even if you are from a prestigious clan, the examiners are those who don't have any connection to the world's scoundrels, and I won't take part in the evaluation. Will this brat be able to pass? For the first time in the entire series, the main character says, "This won't be easy." We see the surprised expressions of the sword girl, who thinks, "What is he saying?" The main character explains that everyone has their own habits in building martial arts, even more so with their striding art. After all, it comes out unconsciously, but if you become conscious of those steps, your rhythm will surely be disrupted. Moreover, the problem is that two people have to go together. How will the test proceed? Are the rest supposed to leave, and only the parties involved remain? One girl asks, and the examiner says no, it will be carried out in front of everyone. People think about how it's an advantage to go later rather than early, considering they should wait and watch others take their first steps and copy them. The sword girl herself hints about how it would be advantageous to see other people and make up for their mistakes. We see someone accepting the challenge as the girl's pupils look towards that person, amazed. Everyone sitting there thinks, will they be all right? The main character smiles and looks towards that guy, saying with a grin on his face, "What a smart guy." There is always value in going first. We see it's none other than the successor and young master of the Northern Heaven Supreme family as he takes the challenge. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next. We see that the rain has covered the pavilion. As the scene subsides, we observe both the Phoenix and Dragon, or rather the successor of the Northern Heaven Supreme family, as they were attempting the second round. We see people wondering about how, being the first challenger, he is that confident in his skill. People are quite surprised about him, but that's understandable coming from the young master. It looks like he has quite a good reputation. We see the main character and the sword girl both looking towards him, thinking about what kind of striding art he will use. The main character seems quite pleased with his decision to go fast, and looks toward the man with a smiling face to ask the guy, and the girl started to place their feet on the pavement engraved in the stone. We see their flourishing image as energy subsides to them. Seeing this image, we see every girl there is in love with the guy, and every man there is quite shocked. Some even say, "How elegant." It didn't take long, one step, then another, and another. In a few seconds and quite a few steps, we see both of them doing it quite easily. We see the expression of the guy, who seems focused and in awe toward the finishing line. We see that the sword girl is quite impressed, seeing his incredible speed. The main character also looked towards him, looking a bit disappointed though. Even the elderly there are talking about how his steps are swift yet accurate, showing an image befitting of the successor of the Northern Heaven Supreme family. Compared to his speed and accuracy, the lady seeming with him is having quite a hard time, but she's still catching up, anxiously considering that they're the first challengers. As the elderly were talking, we see that the young master has already gone through to the end, landing with elegance, both arms behind his back, making it seem like child's play. We see everyone saying how impressive this feat is, but it looks like the brat from the Southern Alliance isn't too happy about it, although the lady sitting beside him seems quite interested. We observe how both of them have passed successfully, and cheers ring out across them. The main character's attention was diverted as he heard, for some reason, "I am nervous. Will we be able to pass too?" We see this as the sword girl asking the main character with all sincerity. The main character, with a smiling expression, says, "No, I don't know why, but the author is quite on point with this character." Anyways, we see the reaction of the sword girl, who is quite baffled by hearing that. She wonders, can't we? The main character corrected his statement a bit. He says how it's not we. The girl is quiet, confused by this, thinking about, so, can we or can we not? We see the main character getting up, wrapping his blades around, as he says, let's practice. Follow me. The girl says, what, are we not watching anymore? The main character says, it's quite obvious most will try to follow after his striding arts and will definitely fail. This is a test to see if you can follow your own unique steps, so we can't pass like that either. The main character sets such a serious tone with nothing on his face. We see, in a rainy courtyard of some sorts, both the main character and the sword girl have arrived as he says, there are no eyes around. This place is quite perfect. The main character asked her to show him the Scarlet Trace sword technique, and he will correct her on the way. It's a test you can't pass with the 7-star realm of this Scarlet Trace sword technique. We see the baffled and confused look of the sword girl, who is wondering about how the main character can correct her technique. She asks him if he's saying that he can grasp the essence of her martial arts just by watching it once. Who are you really? Are you already an expert? As we see the image of the main character in the rain, with both his blade and his sword on his back, we see the smile on his face that implies something as he says, facing the sword girl, I am good enough to teach you. We see the expression of the sword girl, who is speechless after hearing the words of the main character. We see her taking out her sword, saying to him, I have no idea what you mean, but I will give it a try. As the droplets of rain emerge onto the sword, we see her taking up stances and showing her elegant arts, as the main character also follows her movement. She maneuvers the blade in her hand swiftly. We see the main character, after seeing what her martial arts look like, thinking about something as he glances toward her final stance. The main character's eyes are quite fond as he asks her to wait. This startles the girl as she waits. We see the main character telling her, try slowing down that part by half a breath. She follows the main character's instruction as she says, like this. It looks like the aura that was surrounding her has suddenly doubled. We see her expression looking quite surprised about how she only slowed down by half her breath. But the feeling of the sword's movement is completely different. The main character says, nice. Go on now. He looks quite happy seeing her progress. We see a few minutes pass, and she is showing the main character her improved skill with slashes. The main character says, bring your arms more inwards there. The main character is quite strictly instructing her. The position of your left foot is wrong. Each and every single word from the main character is helping or improving her. As he says, you are too fast. Slow down there. The changes the main character's words are bringing are not minimal. We see that she is understanding this fact as well. This is the final form now. We see that the rain has stopped, and in the reflection of the water, we see her martial arts are giving a completely different feeling now. What she has done all this time was completely different from this. We see her final stance is quite elegant as the main character smiles, looking toward her progress as he is the one who instructed her. We see her holding her trembling sword in her hand. She cannot believe it. She absolutely cannot believe what has happened. Is this the Scarlet Trace sword technique that I knew? Just who in the world is the main character? She wonders to herself, looking towards him as he is smiling toward her. The main character congratulates her. Your Scarlet Trace technique just surpassed the 7-star realm and reached the 8-star realm. We see her expression looking toward the main character, thinking about something. She says, with her pupils dilated, is martial arts a joke for you? We observe a man standing in the blatant rain in the forest. As we observe closely, this is the main character's accomplice/servant, with his stolen eyes looking coldly towards somewhere. We see a pathway surrounded by trees. It looks like the 3 elders have arrived. We see the aura they are emitting is quite dense and dark. 1 old woman and 2 men with caps. We see him greeting all 3 of them, saying, you are here. Long time no see. We see the old woman saying that as the man replies, the young master is taking part in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. I shall escort you to the competition hall now. We see the old woman saying to him, sure, but I see that you didn't shave. You look old. Such a comment from a lady pierced through the man's skull. We see even the elder man there saying, you look 5 years older, which pierced through the man's chest. As the 3 of them leave, saying, by the way, why did he take part in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament? We see the man left behind, wounded by their words. We see them saying, "It looks like he's about to do something strange again. Let's get going quickly." As we see in the hall of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, someone is announcing that they will take the challenge. We see everyone's surprised look as they look in the direction of the main character and the sword girl. Thinking about what's with their look, we see the main character introducing himself. "I am Jeek Legion from the Drifting Clouds and Flowing Water," and the sword girl introducing herself, "From the Righteous Sword Sect." We see people thinking about what the main character says. Drifting clouds and flowing water? Seems like this lunatic doesn't have a clan, the man replied. The main character looked toward the girl, saying, "Since this is the 9-star realm of the Scarlet Trace sword technique, this should be easy, right?" We see her distressed eyes and surprise, saying, 9-star, you say? After getting my Scarlet Trace sword technique corrected one more time earlier, you finally reached the 9-star realm." We see the main character smiling towards her, saying, "I heard him say that, but that doesn't make any sense." To the sword girl, he says, "Do you know what the operation name is this time?" She asks, "Operation name?" We see the main character jumping in an instant, saying, "Operation Dragon and Phoenix shine together." As we see the main character already halfway, looking toward her with a smiling, bright face. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen next. We observe as the rain stopped outside the pavilion. We look into the scene that is happening, observing our main character and the sword girl. Both are halfway on the stone pavement. We see the look of the people watching them, sweating in confusion. We see the main character and the sword girl elegantly hopping through the stage as he says, "Pretty good, aren't you?" She says thanks to someone. We see the happy face of her as she is almost flying through the stage, thinking to herself that she is amused that her body can move like this. It is because she is feeling lighthearted now, as if she is dancing. We see the main character in action, saying to her, "The mind comprehends principle, and the body channels them into action." That's how one grabs the essence of martial arts. The essence of martial arts, she thinks to herself, as we see her smoothly landing. Even she was very surprised as she looked down through her eyes. She is mesmerized by the thought about how they have already reached the end. We see the main character has also reached the end with her. She tells the main character that she didn't even figure out how, she got here, at which the main character just looks at her and smiles. While smiling, the main character says, "That was an impressive operation. Dragon and Phoenix shine together." We see her smiling face, looking towards the main character as these words come out of his mouth. The examiner announces that the main character and the sword girl both passed the second round of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Outside, we see the streets where everyone is talking about how they all improved in martial arts, and discussions about the Dragon and Phoenix tournament are in every conversation. We see the main character heading somewhere, his eyes focused. We look, and all three of the elders have arrived and are facing the main character. The main character says, "Grand." We see that his cold nature suddenly shifts into a childish smile as his hands get into a position for a hug, and he extends them towards them, saying, "Grandmother." As the main character was going to hug them, we see a small blade impaling his forehead, with blood splattering down. We see the old lady seeing that, saying, "Disgusting lunatic. Anyone would think you are her biological grandson." The old man says from behind, and we see everyone laughing. It feels like a happy, energetic scene. The main character asks her how she has been, saying that this is the first time they are meeting for a long time, and that she is just too much. We see the old woman talking about how the main character told her that he is establishing a martial faction right here. "You brat. What are you going to do after causing such a big problem?" she says with a smile on her face. The main character replies, "What do you think?" with coldness and a smile on his face. "I'm going to devour the Jianghu." We see her replying, "Do you think uniting Jianghu is that easy? Of course it will be hard. Setting aside the 4 hegemonies, what are you going to do with the 9 Great Set 1 Union, as well as the 4 major clans?" As we see her gaze getting a bit sharper, she says with strictness, "What are you going to do with the Divine Cult?" We see the main character also getting a bit serious hearing the name, as the Divine Cult is equal to the Demonic Cult. It's either the mistake of the translator or the creativity of the author. Anyways, as we see the faces of all 3 of the men around there, the main character just says, "I don't worry about things that haven't even happened," as calm as ever. We see everyone relax a bit, with the old woman sighing. Who does the main character take after? We see the main character instructing his companion/servant to escort the elders well, as the man asks, "Pardon me, where are you going, young master?" We see him saying that he is going after an ugly lunatic. In the mesmerizing scenes of valleys and mountain cliffs, we see the face of the sword girl saying, "No way. You're joking, aren't you?" We see the main character's smiling face saying that he is very serious and that they are going to cross this bridge. As we see a tethered-out bridge stretching from one point to another, it is called the Life and Death Bridge. We see the fear spreading across the sword girl's face as she says she can never do it. The main character says, with almost no expression, "You will regret it if you don't go." We get an explanation about how the lunatic that the main character is after has largely to do with the sword girl. As the main character says that, we see him walking on the bridge, saying that it's just like flat land, and you can just walk on it. We see the sword girl freaking out about how the main character is standing over a dangerous cliff and could fall at any time. We see the main character looking towards her, saying that such thoughts are the difference between an expert and a novice. An expert thinks this is the same as flat land. We see the sword girl being largely affected by the main character's words, her pupils dilated hearing his words. We see her embarrassed face saying, "I know that too. I don't think you're a martial master." The main character responds by saying to her, "But if you at least have the mindset of a martial master, don't you think you'll have to give it a try?" We see him say this with a smile on his face. As these words ring towards the sword girl, we see her thinking to herself that the main character's words are right, and she just has to go through the pathway. We see her walking on the Life and Death Bridge as she almost reaches the middle where the main character is standing right in front of her. We see her looking down with hesitation as she tightly grasps the ropes with her hand. We see that it is going a bit better than what she initially thought, though she still hesitates a lot. The main character smiles towards her, saying that he forgot to tell her something. The wind blows off an ear, so be careful. As we see the vanguard emerging from the deep valleys, the girl just heard what the main character says. We see the wind and the current getting stronger, reaching a point where it is more like a tornado than a wind. We see the main character's image standing still over the bridge, and her image surrounded by wind. We see the wind from behind, coming toward her almost in an attacking pattern. She looks toward the back and is blown into the air, as the whole bridge shakes violently. We see her body going up in the air, her expression stale as she can't fathom what is happening. We see the main character telling her that she does not need to fear and just think of it as flat land. That's right, she thinks to herself, this is no different from flat land. But as we see her posture in the sky, it is a lot scarier for her than it was for the main character to say that. She clenches her eyes, thinking to herself that she is going to fall. But at that moment, suddenly, we see the main character's eyes shrinking, his pupils getting red. As we see him conjuring some of the energy that he has out, dark purplish aura surrounds him. We see him conjuring some power. And with that, we see him pulling out some kind of shadow fight move as purple aura surrounds the girl, who is still in the air, and she is saved. We see her looking towards the main character, thinking to herself, what? As she can't fathom the power that the main character just showed her. Gradually, we see her slowly being brought onto the bridge as she steps toward it, shaking violently, trembling all over. Just a few seconds before, she almost died. As she looks down toward the valleys, the tethering ropes now haunt her, but she still keeps up the spirit of going forward because there is no way back either. For her, this small bridge has become like a life and death obstacle. As the main character stands right in front of her, we see that she has been overwhelmed with fear, so much so that her feet won't even budge a meter. At that time, we see the main character saying to her in a soft voice, "The first time I ever saw you, I thought my heart stopped beating." Wait, was that a confession? The main character says to the sword girl. We see her pupils dilated after hearing the main character. Seeing that, the main character extends his hands, saying, "Come to me because I like you." We see her expression flabbergasted as she thinks to herself, "What? He likes me?" She remembers everything the main character has ever said around her. How wherever he goes, women follow him. How he was stalling at her house. How he even asked her for help. She thinks, no way, does that guy like me? We see her going towards the end with a robot-like motion. her mind now filled with the main character's confession. Before she even knew it, she was on the mountain, past the bridge, still thinking if the main character was joking or not. She thinks to herself, "Did I hear wrong? Didn't I?" We see the main character saying, "You crossed over in no time, didn't you?" But the girl is only seeing the main character confessing to her. She asks the main character about what he just said right now. The main character, with a smile, says, "What I said." We see her blushing, saying, "Were you saying it to distract me because I was too scared?" We see her waiting for an answer as the main character thinks to himself and says, "As I thought, you are smart." We see her punching the bridge, thinking to herself, "You jerk, how dare you toy with someone else's feelings?" As she was throwing punches, we see someone yelling about how dare someone throw punches on the sacred ground. We see her startled face after hearing that, as we see a bald man saying to them, "Stop at once." We see that it's a monk yelling. As we see the girl apologizing to the monk, she says, "I apologize." We see the main character turn his head towards the monk, seeing him. We see the monk in shock, as we see him trying to flee away, saying, "I suppose young people could do that. Ho ho, have fun." Then we see the main character stopping him at once, saying, "You've got quite a convincing disguise, haven't you?" We see the devilish look in the main character's eyes as he looks towards this monk, saying, "However, you can't deceive my eyes, ugly lunatic." It's going to be way crazier in the next chapter. That is